Hey everyone, and welcome to a brand new video. Tonight we have 2 hours of horror stories as per usual. I hope you all enjoy them. If you do, please be sure to drop a like rating. Liking the video helps out so much, and it only takes just a quick second. Subscribing if you are new is also very much appreciated. Really quick, I wanted to apologize for the break in uploads. I know it's been about 2 weeks since my last upload. I got pretty sick. Nothing serious, nothing like over the top or anything. It was just bad enough to where like it was really difficult to record and I was sniffling, and I think sometimes it's better to just wait it out and come back when I'm feeling better, which I do now. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you all enjoyed the video with no ad breaks, except for the ad break after this intro. And as always, I hope you all have a great night. Oh, I jumped when I turned around and saw Albert standing behind me. We didn't know you got here already. Everyone else is downstairs. Albert stood there motionlessly. He drove here himself since he was coming from the north, while the rest of us drove in from the south. But I didn't see his car outside. Without a word, Albert closed the distance between us and hugged me. I patted him on the back. Good to see you too, my friend. His arms around me tightened. I squirmed slightly, gave a little half laugh with an awkward smile, and tried to push myself away. My boyfriend was already upset enough that I was going to a cabin in the woods without him this weekend. And I've always guessed that Albert had a thing for me. Bro, you good? Come on, let's head downstairs. Albert released me. I stepped back and quickly walked towards the door. While we all hugged frequently, that hug was too long for comfort. Right before I exited my room, Albert said, "Get out of here." Huh? Then I made my decision. Whatever Albert wanted to say, he could either say it to the group or not say it at all. Turning towards the stairs, I called out, "Come on, let's go downstairs." Downstairs, I grabbed a cup of water and walked into the living room, where the entire group was eerily silent. All the junk food, board games, and alcohol were half unpacked, but even the explosive duo, Jerry and Nancy, were quiet. I grabbed a big bag of chips, tore it open, and interrupted the silence. "Guys, what's the prank?" Alex said, "Albert's dead." I spat out my water, directly into the bag of chips I opened. What? Let's not say that about anyone. I literally just saw him upstairs. Jesse, that's not funny. My heart skipped a beat. I'd never heard Jerry sound so serious or angry. I wanted to insist. The way the group glared at me made me shut up. Silently, Alex handed me his phone. Alex got a text from Albert's mom, saying that she knew he was heading to hang out with us at a cabin for the weekend, but he got T-boned by a truck about an hour into his drive. Instantly dead. She didn't say anything else, just sent a picture of the wreck. While I was processing the new information and reconciling with what I just saw upstairs, Nancy said, "Maybe we drive north to his house." Albert's house was about 4 hours north of here. "I'm too tired to drive again," said Jerry. He poured himself an entire plastic cup of whiskey and chugged it. His voice was hoarse when he spoke again. "Don't make a difference anyway. Maybe if we pray hard enough he'll show up." That was Nelson. When he saw that most of us gave him dirty looks, he threw up his hands. "Look, I know you guys aren't religious, but there's a chance that this is just a prank, right? Like Jesse said, a prank. Albert stole his mom's phone, and then he shows up and scares us all." I wanted to nod in agreement, but Albert wasn't the kind of person who'd prank us. He was always the first person to stay back and take care of someone. The kind of person who'd give a kidney to a stranger. Nancy said, "Nelson, shut up." Not getting any signal anymore. Alex, who was on his phone the whole time, looked up. You guys got any signal? Maybe we can call Albert or his mom. We all shook our head. It could be a prank, right? That was me. Upstairs, Albert had his arms wrapped so tightly around me that I felt skeptical, and I distinctively remember inserting a bro for more emotional distance. I'm not kidding. I saw him upstairs. He hugged me. You probably even heard me talking to him from the stairs. Y'all are sick in the head. Nancy stood up with so much force that her stool fell to the ground behind her. Prank? We hear that Albert's dead, from his mom, and y'all think it's just a prank. You think his mom would joke about that? Hi guys, my son is dead. Car accident. Haha, funny. And you, Jesse, nobody's in the house except the 6 of us. We checked the whole house first thing, and the only entrance is right here. So stop messing with us. Nancy stormed off. Nelson gave me a weird look. She's right, Jess. Carrying my bag in winded me up, so I've been here since we entered. Nobody entered or left the house. Let's just chill, alright? Said Jerry. He was on his 3rd full cup of whiskey. Chill, sleep, and we drive north first thing tomorrow. Yeah, let's chill. Cassie and Alex huddled in one of the couches, while I sprawled on the other. I had my Kindle open, but I'd been reading the same sentence for the last hour. Nobody had signal. We'd purposely picked a cabin without Wi-Fi, and nobody knew how to act without more information. There'd been a couple of, do you really think? But it never got further than that. Nelson's voice broke the silence. Guys, Nancy's been hogging the bathroom for an hour and won't answer to knocks. Nelson had his pajamas tucked under his arms and a toothbrush in his hands. Normally, he would get crap for believing in 8 hours of sleep and sleeping before midnight. But not today. The upstairs bathroom was the only bathroom with a shower. I don't know. It's been quiet, said Jerry. He was sipping from a bottle of rum now. It's probably hitting her hard, said Cassie. I'll check up on her. Minutes later, we all heard Cassie scream. Cassie tumbled downstairs, falling into a heap at the bottom of the stairs. She fell head first into a nearby lamp, knocking it over. Her ankle twisted in a weird angle, but she didn't care. Nancy's dead. Cassie screamed again, burying her head in her hands. Alex ran to her side and hugged her. Jerry ran upstairs. Seconds later, he was back in the kitchen with a grim look on his face. His eyes were wide open, as if he'd forgotten to blink. His hands were bloody, and he held them away from his body. It's true. No pulse or anything. Don't go look. There's so much blood in the bathroom. Her wrists. Alex, Nelson, and I shared a look. None of us needed to go look for ourselves. I shuddered and pulled a throw over my shoulders. Cassie sobbed. I knew she had a thing for Albert, but... She'd at least want to verify that he's really dead first, right? I asked. This doesn't make sense. Alex glared at me. You still don't believe Albert's dead? Saw him upstairs? Seeing Nancy downstairs now? Jerry spoke loudly. Let's call the police. We all checked our phones. Still no signal. Landline? They still have that? 3 policemen arrived in a police van. They seemed ridiculously decked out, with bulletproof vests, gas masks, and 3 guns each. They introduced themselves as Officer Gerald, Officer Melissa, and Officer Josh. They had no information on any car wreck up north, but they said they had to keep us here for the interrogation. They sent us back to our bedrooms to isolate us, and said they'll speak to us one by one. Hours later, after interrogating us, they told us they had to detain us here in the house because a tree had fallen in the road. The bathroom upstairs, where Nancy took her own life, was sealed off, but the bathroom downstairs and everywhere else in the house was ours to use. That night, I heard knocking on one of the walls of my bedroom. I focused and realized that it was tapping out Morse code. Right, Jerry had the room next to mine. Jerry and I first met on a search and rescue training camp, so both of us knew Morse code. I wrote out the taps I heard. What do you mean you saw Albert earlier? I looked around my bedroom. Clearly, Albert was not in the house. I'd also checked that his car was not in the yard. I tapped. Don't worry about it. Do you think they're allowed to keep us here like this? Jerry tapped back. No, they're sus. I assessed our situation. We were in a glamping cabin in a cul-de-sac about 40 miles away from the nearest town. Jerry had thought it'd be funny to pick a cabin without Wi-Fi, and we figured we weren't too far away from town anyway. Worst comes to worst, we could hike to the town, right? Should we run away? You saw their guns. Officer Josh was stationed outside, in the police van near our car. Officer Gerald and Officer Melissa were near the front door, guarding the only conventional way in and out of the house. They didn't look like they were going to take us anywhere. We have food and water, surely. They'll clear the tree soon, right? Jerry tapped back. Is there really a tree? I don't know how I fell asleep that night, but by the time I woke up, the sun was high in the sky and our car, Jerry's car actually, was gone. Along with Jerry, 3 of us, me, Cassie, and Nelson, gathered in the living room with Officer Melissa and Officer Josh, quietly waiting for news. Alex insisted on going out to search with Officer Gerald, and after some back and forth, Officer Gerald agreed to take him in the police van. Officer Gerald and Alex returned with the news that Jerry drove into the large tree that fell, skidded, and fell off the slope. We confirmed that Jerry drank a lot last night, but none of us knew Jerry sneaked out of the house. I thought about our conversation in Morse code. Something wasn't adding up. For those of you still questioning, yes, there's a tree, said Officer Gerald. He gestured to Alex, who showed us pictures on his phone. A fallen tree blocking the road, the car wreck of Jerry's car about 100 feet below the road. They're clearing the tree tomorrow, so just one more night and we will take you back to the police station. Can't we just walk to the town? That came from me. 40 miles, some elevation, is like 13 hours if we really push it. I can't do that. Cassie gestured to her ankle, which she'd sprained falling down the stairs last night. She lifted the ice pack and showed us that it had swollen into a purple bulb. I can't either, said Nelson, pulling out his inhaler. I'd die after half a mile. Come on, Jesse, said Alex. He wrapped his arm around my shoulder and gave me a squeeze. Just stay with the group. One more day and we'll all drive back. For lunch, we ate sandwiches. I did a quick inventory and guessed that we had about 5 days of food. I also had some beef jerky, granola bars, snacks, and extra bottles of water upstairs. Since Jerry, Alex, and I were originally planning to tackle a difficult hike nearby, how did everything go from a fun glamping weekend out in the woods to half of us dead? The officers kept a watchful eye on us, but did not try to interact with us. Officer Josh tried to reassure us a couple times that help will be here tomorrow, but none of us talked back. I helped Cassie ice her ankle, but Alex and Nelson were quiet. Nobody touched more of the alcohol. Around 8, I was back in my bedroom, on my bed zoning out. I'd checked religiously, but I never got any signal on my cell phone. The landline had also mysteriously gone out after the call for police. Was there any way we could move the tree ourselves? Would it help if I hiked to the town and brought help back? I was startled out of my bed by the ground shaking. The floor of my bedroom pulsed as if something was hitting the ceiling of the room under me. I remembered a prank we used to play on each other when Jerry's room was right below Nelson's room in the dorms. We'd bang on the ceiling with a broomstick, until Nelson stormed downstairs to yell at us. I still remember Nelson yelling about his 8 hours of sleep. I left my room, shivering as the bathroom with the yellow police tape came into view, and hurried downstairs. I could see Gerald and Melissa smoking on the other side of the front door, but Cassie, Alex, and Nelson were not in the living room. Even now, I could hear the banging from the kitchen. Rolling my eyes, I headed over and flipped on the kitchen light, hoping to catch the culprit in action. "Yo, what are you doing?" I screamed. Nelson's body flopped on the floor, but judging by the amount of blood and brain splattered, it was obvious that his head had been mashed against the ceiling. Something had lifted Nelson's body all the way up to the 10-feet ceiling and banged his head against the ceiling multiple times. No human could have committed that murder. Even the police didn't try to question us. "Something's wrong with this house." It was Cassie who spoke first. Alex had his arms around her, and she was visibly shaking. "We have to get out of here immediately." "The tree," said Officer Gerald, now that he was done smoking. His gas mask with night vision goggles was back on his face. His fingers were white around the handle of his rifle. He gestured to all of us. "We can hike the road to town." "I'd do it," I immediately said. I glanced at the clock. 1 a.m. "I'll take my bag and walk to town, starting right now." "Jesse," Alex snapped at me. "Cassie can't walk. What are you going to do? Leave her here alone with 3 dead bodies?" "She can use a branch, or use Jerry's hiking sticks," I snapped back. Ignoring how everyone winced at the mention of Jerry's name, I turned to Cassie. "Do you want to stay here with 3 dead bodies and some force that can mash our heads into the ceiling? Or do you want a messed up ankle?" "I'll go," Cassie gasped. Suddenly her hand flew to her throat and her eyes rolled to the back of her head. Alex caught her and they both slid to the ground. Officer Melissa headed over, opening the visor of her helmet to check on Cassie. I'd noticed that Officer Gerald and Officer Josh immediately trained their guns on Cassie when she gasped. "She's knocked out," said Officer Melissa. She shot a worried look over to Officer Gerald. "Just fainted." "There's something wrong with the house for sure. I didn't feel like I was in immediate danger, but who can predict how volatile the mysterious killing force was? I easily trusted myself to walk for the next 15 hours until I reached the town. But could I just leave my last 2 remaining friends here?" The way these police officers braced for impact and aimed their gun toward every little sound. "Jesse, please," said Alex. "Please, please." I turned towards the officers. "Now that it's just you and us, and half of us are dead, tell us the truth," I said. I stared Gerald right in the eye, through his night vision goggles. "I know you're not police officers. You know we didn't kill our friends. Why are you holding us here?" "Dear, what are you talking about?" asked Melissa. She'd moved her gas mask off her mouth, but her night vision goggles hid her eyes. She tried to smile, but her fingers didn't stray far from her handgun. "You're scaring your friends." "Yeah, young lady," said Josh. He was tense for combat. "Believe me, I know you're under a lot of stress right now." 3 fully automatic military-grade assault rifles, with over 1,000 rounds each. 3 rifles customized to fire 25.5mm bullets. 3 handguns and over 30 grenades in your van, I said. "You're not here to investigate someone taking their life here on vacation with some friends." Did that landline really work, or were they waiting out there the entire time? "The 3 of you have been consistently eating raw garlic," I continued. "You know something is wrong with this cabin, and you are terrified. That's why you guys have more ammo and armor than special ops and war zones. But you're here to keep us here until we're dead. Why?" My heart was pounding. After a long pause, Gerald gestured towards the couch in the living room. Alex and I carried Cassie over to the couch. Josh and Melissa took food from the kitchen and then closed the kitchen screen, leaving Nelson's corpse on the other side. "We call it the taking," said Gerald. "We don't know when it started, but it must take every year during the fullest moon of the year." "We tried everything," Josh interrupted. Gerald shot him a look, but Josh continued. "Believe me, we tried everything we could to stop it. If we offer fresh bodies every year, nothing bad happens to our town. If we don't, we get cursed. Crops fail, animals die, diseases spread, sores, boils, and plagues everywhere. Fires start. Initially, we offered our own, but we noticed that it naturally gravitates towards foreigners. More fresh. It gravitates towards foreigners and it gravitates away from garlic," I said. I thought about the box of garlic chips in my bag that I'd been snacking on the past 2 days. My eyes narrowed as an idea came to mind. Nancy didn't die from taking her own life, did she? "Don't think so," said Gerald. He took another garlic out of his snack container and bit down on it. "We don't know any patterns to its kill method. We've seen everything from evisceration to suffocation, but no patterns." "So we're just here to die," said Alex. "You're here to keep us here until we die." "Believe me, we don't want to hurt anyone," said Josh. Gerald shrugged. "We must stay here until the taking is over. Hard to believe, but it's safer in the cabin than out there on the road next to the woods. It can just throw you over the cliff, you know." "We take precaution, but we're not much safer than you guys," said Melissa. "All of us here have lost someone to a taking." "I never want to hurt anyone," said Josh. "Believe me, if there's a way to help you guys, I'll do it. I never wanted anyone to die." I asked, "Can I step outside for a moment?" "Suit yourself." Alex was also taken that night. He'd stabbed Cassie to death in the tool shed, and then stabbed himself. Melissa advised me not to check with my own eyes, and I nodded, flopping down on the couch in the living room. "It'll probably also take you tonight," Melissa said, as if she was trying to be reassuring. She seemed ill at ease, despite how equipped she was. "The taking is over when the moon starts to wane. That's in an hour." "If I survive this taking, will you guys really let me live?" I asked. The uncomfortable look on her face told me everything I needed to know. "Tell me about your daughter," I said. I'd picked up my Kindle out of habit but didn't bother opening the cover. I gestured at a pink and orange string bracelet Melissa wore around her wrist. "Just to pass some time." Before Melissa spoke, a voice rang across the space. "Who messed with my gun?" Gerald entered the dining room. After leaving to use the bathroom, his heavy rifle had been left next to Josh, who was still sitting a foot away from it. Now, Gerald picked up his rifle and examined it with suspicion. Gerald peered through the sight. "Nobody," said Josh. He was popping slices of raw garlic into his mouth. "I was a foot away from it the whole time, and the girls were on the couch." "Yeah, we were here," Melissa reaffirmed. Gerald shouldered his rifle, playfully aimed it at us, and hollered at Melissa. "Babe, don't get too attached. She's going to die soon." Melissa gave me a smile, then stood up to walk over to Gerald. Her heavy equipment rattled as she moved, and she warily scanned the room. Nancy was made to take her own life. Jerry crashed into the tree. Or maybe that was a legit accident. Nelson got his head rammed into the ceiling. Alex and Cassie died by a knife. How did it plan to take next? In the middle, Melissa stopped. Her eyes widened. All around her, the floorboards started to pop off, showing the foundation of the house in full view, a mess of wires, cement, and tree roots. Melissa began to sink into a hole that formed below her feet. She reached for her handgun, fumbled, and then screamed as she accidentally shot herself. She sank deeper into the hole that opened up. Gerald rushed towards her, but Josh held him back. "It's already chosen. You can't stop it." "What did you do?" Gerald spat at me. His eyes almost bulged out of their sockets. "You witch. You witch. How did you make it take Melissa instead of you?" Melissa screamed louder. Half her body was out of view now, and something was happening to her under the floorboards. She shot wildly, probably shooting her own legs more than she was shooting anything else. A sharp branch emerged and cracked open Melissa's body, finally silencing her after it pierced through her mouth. Gerald spoke free from Josh. He rushed towards me and punched me in the face. Then he slung his rifle over to aim it at me. I held up my hands as he pressed into my space. I could perhaps trick an ancient entity into taking a local instead of me, but there was no way I could convince Gerald to not shoot me out of vengeance. He leveled the barrel of his gun to my forehead. "Wait," I tried to stall. My cheeks were swelling from his punch. "You want to know how I tricked the entity, right?" I lifted my fingers to the collar of my shirt. Slowly as I could, I began to unbutton my shirt. There was a layer of filth under my shirt, garlic chips and piss mixed with local dirt, a repugnant mixture that I smeared all over myself when I asked to go outside earlier. I was probably going to get some skin infections, but it made me too dirty for the entity. "You said it preferred foreigners because foreigners were fresher." I also learned something else. I fibbed. My mind raced. I learned other things too. Many things. Really unbelievable things. Things that can maybe help you in your town in the future. I figured out... "You know what?" said Gerald. "Screw you." He pulled the trigger. There was a loud bang. The smell of gunpowder filled the room. Gore splattered all over me. I took several steps back. My hand flew to my forehead, but I was not the one who was shot. Gerald began to fall, shock clearly evident in what was left of his eyes. The rifle, smoking from the malfunction, fell from his hand. Gerald made a last-ditch effort, turned towards Melissa's body, but his body slumped to the ground before he moved a foot. I heard clicks. Josh's voice was a whisper. Beads of sweat ran in streams down his face. I heard some clicks come from Jer's gun when he was going to the bathroom and told me to watch his gun, but when I looked up, I saw nobody. In the smoke of the gun, a form began to take shape. Albert was right before me. No one was alive to believe that I was, once again, seeing Albert. I ran over to him, but unlike last time, he was not solid. My gesture merely disturbed the smoke that formed his body, and my arms passed right through him when I tried to hug him. Albert lifted a hand, as if to run it down my face, then vanished. There was a faint trace of smile on his face. The malfunctioned gun stopped smoking. I picked it up, but Josh made no moves to attack me. "I never wanted anyone to die," said Josh. He dropped his gun and his hands were in the air. "Please believe me. It took my parents when I was a kid, but I have kids now. I have 3 kids and a wife." I said coldly, "Let me go." "Yeah, go. The road will unblock itself after the taking. Look, I never wanted anyone to die. Please believe me. I never wanted to hurt anyone." I looked outside. The sun was starting to crawl from behind the horizon, and the moon was waning. The taking, whatever it was over. The filth was starting to make my skin itchy. I thought about how Nancy's rotting corpse occupied the only bathroom with a shower. Should I take a shower first? Or should I just get the hell out of here? I'm typing this from his study. The Wi-Fi cuts every 10 minutes, and I don't know if this will post. If you're reading this, I need you to know my name and where I am, in case I don't make it out tonight. His name is Mark. Dating app 2 years ago. I was in Brooklyn. He was somewhere in the French countryside west of Paris. Sunset over a stone wall in his profile pic. Glass of wine and... I don't know. There was something lonely about him. I recognized it. I swiped right. He messaged first. We FaceTimed every night for 2 years. Every single night. Copper pots behind him. Dusk through the kitchen window. He looked like an ad for the life I wanted. He'd remember things I mentioned once. At 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. And bring them up weeks later with the date memorized. I thought that meant he loved me. I need to tell you about me so you understand why he chose me. I'm 28, half Cape Verdean, half American. Grew up behind a wall in Riyadh. 30 identical houses, 30 identical lawns. Boarding school in Geneva at 13. College in New York. I speak 3 languages and none of them sound like me. My whole life I've been whoever the room needed. The closeted kid in Saudi, the fluent fraud in Geneva, the guy eating cereal for dinner in an apartment he can't afford. Alone. Mark saw through all of it, or I thought he did. He'd say, "Tell me something nobody knows," and then just sit there on the screen, not reacting, not performing back to me, and I'd end up telling him things I'd never said out loud. About my father, about David, the boy I loved at 16 who I couldn't tell anyone about because of where we lived. About how I set an alarm at 6 and hit snooze until 7:30 because the sound of the alarm is the only proof that a new day started. Stupid things. Real things. 2 years of this. 15 days together in person total. Then I gave up my apartment. Packed 12 boxes and flew to France. He picked me up at Charles de Gaulle. When I came through arrivals and saw him standing by that battered pudgy out, I walked fast, not a run. My bag was heavy and my legs were shaking. He met me halfway, pulled me in. One of those hugs where your whole body goes quiet for a second. Pressed my face into his neck and he smelled like coffee and wool and I just stood there breathing him in while taxis honked behind us. He said, "Tastes law." And I said, "I almost didn't get on the plane." And he said, "But you did." He kissed me. Hard. Hands on my jaw. On a late night call 2 years ago, I described my perfect first kiss. This was it. Exactly. The drive was an hour west of Paris. The A13, then smaller roads, then smaller ones. At some point the GPS died. Signal lost. Route calculation unavailable. Mark said he didn't need it. He knew the way. I checked my phone. No signal. The dashboard clock said 2:47. My phone said 4:12. Nearly 90 minutes difference. I figured the phone lost its time sync. The road narrowed, trees pressing in on both sides, branches scraping the mirrors. The light went gray-green, filtered through canopy too thick for July. Then the village appeared. 1 second trees, the next second stone, like it had been waiting. Rapilli. 60 buildings, maybe 70. Dark granite, half-timbered facades, slate roofs. Flower boxes on every window. Every flower the exact same shade of pink. A fountain, a church tower, mist in the lanes. It was beautiful. It was silent, not quiet, nothing. No children, no dogs, no radio, no wind. I could hear the car's engine cooling. I could hear the fountain. That was it. Mark said, "That's what's special about it. and drove to his house on the eastern edge where the buildings end and the forest begins. The house was beautiful too. Old stone, thick walls. Inside it smelled like bread and lavender and something underneath. Wet stone, something underneath the wet stone. I'm not going to describe every room because I don't have time, but you need to know about the photographs. On the mantle, Mark hiking, Mark cooking, Mark on a mountain ridge at sunset. Every photo, just Mark. Self-timer, he said. Tripod. When you live alone long enough, you learn to document yourself. I picked up the mountain photo. The shadows on his face were wrong, falling from the left, but the sun was setting on the right, and in the corner, barely visible, a second set of footprints in the snow leading to where Mark stands. No footprints leading away. He showed me the bedroom, low ceiling, white linen. The pillow on my side, left side, my preferred side, was already dented, like someone had been sleeping there. In my shape. Home, he whispered into my hair. His hand was on the back of my neck. You're home now. When he touched my face, his hand was cool. Not cold, but not warm either. Like touching a wall. I leaned into it anyway. That first night he asked me about my day. The flights, the terminal, everything. The gate agent almost made me miss it, I said. Tell me about her, he said. He was sitting close enough that I could feel his breath. I want to know everything about today. Everything. So I did, and every time I stopped, he'd ask something that pulled me back in. Not, how did that feel, but what did the tarmac smell like, and what was the exact sound of the boarding announcement? I talked for an hour. He just sat there the whole time, not moving, watching me like I was the most interesting thing he'd ever seen. While I talked, his eyes changed. His pupils got huge. Not from the light. They opened with my voice, black swallowing the brown. When I stopped talking, they shrank back. When I started again, they opened, like breathing. After I fell asleep, I half woke up and felt his hand in my hair. Same strokes, same pressure, over and over, exactly the same each time. A loop. I put my hand on his chest. It rose and fell perfectly, but there was no heartbeat, just a vibration. The hum of something running on the walls, the sound a refrigerator makes, the sound of machinery. I told myself I was tired. Jet lag, new bed. You tell yourself whatever you have to at 3 a.m. when the other option is getting up and leaving and having nowhere to go. Later that week, I woke up at 4 a.m. Mark was on his back, eyes wide open, fixed on the ceiling, unblinking. His lips were twitching, fast, making shapes that weren't words in any language I know. This low sound coming out of him, almost static, but shaped, like syllables. I touched his shoulder and he snapped awake. Not gradually, not with the confusion of sleep. Instant. A smile assembled itself on his face. Can't sleep? He said. Another night, I looked out the bedroom window at 3 a.m. and Mark was standing in the garden, 20 meters from the tree line, arms at exactly the same angle from his body. A moth landed on his forearm, crawled up to his face. Over his eye, he didn't blink. Then his head started to rotate toward the window. Just his head. Shoulders didn't move. 20 degrees. 30. Past where a neck should bend. When it faced me, it was still smiling. I hit the light switch, looked back. Gone. A perfect circle of dead grass where he'd been standing. The bedroom door opened behind me. Mark. Pajamas. Glass of water. Hair mussed. He couldn't have gotten there that fast. You were outside, I said. In the garden. Your head was... I was in the kitchen. His voice was soft, concerned. I couldn't sleep. You were sleeping so beautifully I didn't want to wake you. He stepped closer. Why would I go outside, in the dark, when you're here? And it sounded right. It sounded so right that I almost started crying because what if I imagined it? What if I was already losing my mind? He touched my face. Cool hand. Let's go back to bed. I can hear him moving around downstairs. The roads loop. I went for a walk on day 3. Past the fountain, past the bakery, past the church. Out the southern road. 20 minutes. The road curves, the trees thin. Open sky, then rooftops. A church tower. The village square. I was back. I'd walked in a straight line. I tried again. Marked a tree with a scratch from a rock. Walked 15 minutes the other way. Open sky ahead, and then I emerged into the square. My scratch was on a tree at the edge of the square. The forest had moved. I told Mark. He smiled. The roads know where they go, he said. He put a plate in front of me. Every path leads home. The village isn't on any map. I searched from the study. 1 bar of Wi-Fi. Typed Rapilli Commune Calvados and got a census page. Population 44. Okay. Tried Rapilli Village, France. Nothing. Rapilli Calvados. Directions. Nothing. Page loads. Sits there. Times out. I tried BBC. Loaded fine. Read it. Fine. Anything about this place specifically just stops. We're not on the map, Mark said. It's ours. Our own world. The villagers smile. All of them. The same smile. Same crinkle at the eyes. Same slight part of the lips. The old man on the bench. The woman sweeping her doorstep. The baker. Like they all learned from the same photograph. One morning I watched a fly land on the baker's eye. It crawled across his iris. He didn't blink. He was still smiling at the closed door after I left. I went for a walk one night at 2 a.m. because I couldn't sleep. The square was empty. Every window dark. Every door closed. And then at dawn, they were simply there. Between 1 second and the next. The old man on the bench. The woman mid-sweep. Like a game loading from a saved state. Mark threw me a dinner party. The 4 guests arrived at the exact same moment, walking in unison, footsteps hitting the cobblestones in rhythm. One of them ate dessert. I watched his jaw work as he raised the fork, but when his mouth opened for the next bite, the previous one was still there. Unchewed, dry. Every embrace at the door was the same duration. 3 seconds. I counted. One more thing about the dinner. When one of the guests, Pierre, asked me, "What are you afraid of?" the table went still. All 4 of them turned their heads toward me. Not all at once. In sequence. Their smiles didn't change. I found Mark's laptop one day while he was out. Empty. No files. No folders. No browser history. It had never been connected to the internet. It was a prop. The whole room was a prop. In the bottom drawer of his desk, I found a pencil drawing. A man's face with sharp cheekbones and dark eyes. Under it, in tight handwriting, Thomas, first attempt, 1878. The journals. I have to tell you about the journals. Wi-Fi dropped again. My hands won't stop shaking. Attic. Cardboard box. Soft with damp. Dozens of notebooks. All Mark's handwriting. The first page. Subject. E. Marsh. Preliminary observations. That's me. E. presents as anxious avoidant with strong people-pleasing tendencies. Third culture kid profile. Cape Verdean, American raised in Riyadh, Geneva, Brooklyn. Adaptive personality architecture across all three. He becomes what each environment requires. This makes him exceptionally responsive to sustained attention and active listening. He is not accustomed to being the focus. Dietary. Coffee black, 1 sugar. Comfort foods. Rice and beans. Mothers. Grilled cheese. Childhood. Aversion to raw tomato. Textural. Sleep patterns. Left side dominant. Deep sleep begins approximately 45 minutes after closing eyes. During deep sleep, he is unreachable. Psychological profile, primary wound. First romantic attachment at 16. Male, name David K. Relationship concealed due to environment, Riyadh. He believes love requires hiding. He will tolerate extraordinary dysfunction in exchange for the feeling of being fully known. Leverage point. Attraction profile. Responsive to competence, domesticity, and focused attention. Physical type. Broader build, dark features. Manual confidence. Note. Deep body shame. Will interpret physical acceptance as proof of love. Exploit. The notes go back years, before we matched, before we ever spoke. Printed screenshots of my Instagram annotated in red ink. My walking route time-stamped. He knew my coffee order, my thread count. He ordered the lavender soap from Bayou because I mentioned once at 11:22 p.m. on November 14th that I liked lavender. Every single detail I thought I was sharing for the first time, he already had in a notebook. He didn't remember because he loved me. He remembered because he was studying me. Every FaceTime call was data collection, and I just sat there in my underwear in my unmade bed, giving him everything because nobody had ever bothered to ask. I broke into the basement that night. The padlock was new, brass against ancient wood. 3 strikes with a hammer wrapped in a towel. Stone steps, narrow. The air changed with each step down. Got thick, warm, body temperature warm. It tasted like iron and dirt and something sweet I didn't want to think about. The basement is larger than the house above it. The beams aren't wood. They branch and join like roots, like veins. When I pressed my hand against one, it was warm, moving, barely. On the far wall, carvings, older than the house by millennia, humanoid figures, surrounding a central image, a large circle containing a smaller circle, tendrils extending in every direction. Below in crude Latin, Ne kibum tuam amet. I typed it into my phone's translation app. It gave me 2 options. Do not love your food, or do not let your food love you. Against the wall, belongings. 42 collections. Suitcases, backpacks, trunks, each tagged with a handwritten label. Emile Garnier, 1834 through 1851. Thomas Hargreaves, 1878 through 1891. Sophia Johansson, 1912 through 1923. Marie Claire Beaumont, 1952 through 1964. Colette Favre, 1971 through 1983. Yuki Tanaka, 2003 through 2009. Kareem Osman, 2022 through 2024. And next to Kareem's collection, a blank tag. Elliot Marsh, 2024 through present. My hands started shaking. I opened Kareem's bag, a rainbow flag keychain, a hand-knitted scarf with uneven tension and dropped stitches, a copy of Giovanni's Room with the spine cracked at page 112, a Polaroid, Kareem, 24, dark eyes, a gap between his front teeth, wearing the scarf, and Mark, same face, same smile, on the back in blue pen. Day 30, I think I might stay forever. Near the floor, fingernail scratches in stone. Aid moi. Help me. It can hear you. Don't tell it your name. I tried to leave the basement. The door stuck. Wouldn't move. 5 seconds of my breath loud against stone. Then it gave, sudden and easy, like it was never stuck, like something had been holding it shut and decided to let go. I put the journal on the kitchen table the next night, open to leverage point. He looked at it. His face went through something. Surprise, then concern, then something like guilt, then back to concern, each one lasting exactly the right amount of time, like he was trying them on. Those are notes, he said, from a long time ago, when I was trying to understand attachment. Bowlby, Ainsworth. It sounds clinical because it is clinical, but it's not. Will tolerate extraordinary dysfunction in exchange for feeling fully known, I read. Leverage point. Nothing for a long time. Nothing. I should have written it differently, he said. I was cold. I should have written the thing that hurt him most. The beach, I said. Jeddah, with my father, you. My voice stopped. You told me that memory last week, like it was mine. He didn't move. I've never been to a beach with my father in Jeddah. My mother took me. We watched planes. 1 second of nothing. His face just went out, like I was looking at a wall. Something with no rooms behind it. Does it matter? He said. His voice was flat. You remember the beach. You remember being loved on the beach. I gave you that. Doesn't matter whose father was holding your hand. He told me what he is that night. Or tried to. I'm old, he said, but the word came out wrong. Layered. His voice and a woman's voice and something underneath both of them. His French broke apart mid-sentence and a child's voice came through singing something I didn't recognize. His mouth kept moving. I could see him fighting to get back to his own voice. I have been 3 languages at once. Then silence. He was breathing hard like he'd pulled himself back from drowning. I can't leave it, he said. Just Mark again, mostly. I am it. The roads, the houses, the people. They're me. All of it is me. You're eating me, I said. Not... His voice cracked. Something underneath it, something old pushing through. Not eating. When you tell me about the feeling. He stopped, breathed. When he spoke again, it was Mark, mostly. When you tell me about your day, the warmth of it, the ache, the relief of being seen, I take that, gradually, every night. The vividness fades. You become flat. When there's nothing left, you just go out. He said he didn't want to consume me. He wanted me to stay. Willingly. And while he said it, he looked at me with this expression that... I don't know. It could have been love, or it could have been something he learned from the 42 people before me who thought they loved him back. I said okay. I took his hand. I let him walk me upstairs. Each step creaked under me, but not under him. Halfway up, I looked back and the living room was dark. Fire out. And from up there, the furniture didn't look like furniture anymore. It looked like the inside of something. I don't know how else to say it. Like I was standing inside a body. I got into bed. His arm wrapped around me. Cool. The same temperature as the walls. I've been starving him for 9 days. Every night he says, "Tell me about your day." And I say, "Fine." Read. Came to bed. That's it. Nothing he can use. And the village is dying. The flower boxes went brown first. Then the fountain water got thick. almost syrupy. The baker's smile is stuck now, one corner lifting and falling and lifting, like a broken GIF. Henry has been sitting in his truck for 3 days. Engine catches, idles, cuts out, catches again. A spider built a web between his wrist and the steering column, and he hasn't moved to break it. The old man on the bench closed his eyes 2 days ago. Hasn't opened them, but the smile is still there, smiling with nothing behind it. He told me he is the village. I didn't get what that meant until I watched it starve with him. The baker, Henry, the old man, they're not people, they're his fingers. And I'm watching them go numb one by one. He can't leave this place to find someone else. He can't make me talk. He has to be loved into it. That's all he knows how to do. So the only weapon I have is not loving him back. I had a memory yesterday. My apartment in Brooklyn, eating cereal, waiting for Mark to call. I could see it perfectly. The bowl, the counter, the way my phone screen would light up. But I couldn't feel any of it. That flutter you get when someone's about to call, and you know they're going to ask about your day and actually want the answer. Gone. I can picture the room, but the feeling's been scooped out of it. I can describe it, but I can't be in it anymore. 2 days ago, I looked in the bathroom mirror while brushing my teeth, and my reflection lagged. Just for a second, my mouth moved and the mirror followed. A half beat later, like a bad FaceTime connection. I blinked. It synced back up. I told myself it was exhaustion. Then this morning I looked in the mirror and my reflection glitched. One frame, less than a second. Kareem's face, dark eyes, gap between the teeth. Then mine again. I gripped the sink until my knuckles went white. Day 6, I found a woman sitting in the cemetery behind the church. Colette. She was the only one in the village who didn't smile. Her tag in the basement said 1971 through 1983. 12 years. She got out. I don't know how or why she came back. She told me the roads open when the entity breaks. Between 3 and 5 in the morning, when the village sleeps. Take nothing. Walk. Don't stop. Why did you come back? I asked. She looked at the church tower. My daughter came after me. She's still here. That was all she said about it. Some of the feelings will come back, she said. Not all. Never all. I asked her how many feelings came back. Enough to get through the day, she said. Not enough to want to. I'm going to try tonight. 3 a.m. The Southern Road. I have my passport in my back pocket. No bag. Nothing that belonged to this house. Mark is downstairs. I can hear him in the kitchen, but he hasn't cooked in days. There's nothing to cook. There's a bowl in the fridge with something gray in it. Blue veins running through. The wine went to vinegar. The bread tastes like nothing. He keeps asking me to talk. Not the ritual, just anything. He's not performing anymore. He's starving. Part of me wants to go down there. I got as far as the study door, hand on the knob. I could hear him in the kitchen opening the fridge, the hum of nothing inside it. Tell me something, he called up, just his voice. Please, anything. The bird you watched this morning, the sky, anything. His voice cracked on the please, not fake, really cracking. I opened the door. I was on the first step before I stopped myself because I remember what it felt like to have someone's full attention, to be asked about my day by someone who actually wanted the answer. And I knew if I sat at that table and told him about the bird, the 3 notes it sang, I wasn't getting back up. Just like Kareem. Just like Colette's daughter. I went back to the study, closed the door. Downstairs, Mark stopped moving. I know it was fake. I know he's been doing this for 200 years, but my body doesn't care. My stupid, lonely body felt it, and it doesn't care that the thing feeling it back wasn't human. I don't know if the roads will open tonight. I don't know if there's enough of me left to walk them. Wi-Fi just flickered. I'm going to type fast. If this posts, if the connection holds, then someone knows my name is Elliot Marsh. I'm in a village called Rapilly, somewhere west of Paris, and a man named Mark is going to ask me about my day one more time. I'm not going to answer. Wait, he's coming up the stairs. I can hear them creaking, slowly, one at a time. He's outside the study door. I can see the shadow in the gap underneath. It's not moving, just standing there. He's whispering in my voice. The night I told him about David played back through the door. I've never told anyone that before. I've never told anyone that before. I've never told anyone that before. On a loop. If I don't post again, check the basement. Look for the bag with my name on it. There won't be much inside. The police sirens were loud enough to wake the entire neighborhood. I heard them before I even opened my eyes. The overlapping echoes kept getting closer. My mom and dad were already out of bed by the time I stepped into the hallway. My sister right behind me. We all went outside together and saw that nearly every neighbor was doing the same thing, drawn down the sidewalk toward a cluster of flashing red and blue lights. As we got closer, I realized all of it was happening in front of the Dreadmore house. The house had been abandoned for as long as I could remember. The boarded windows, the sagging porch, the stories people told about it being haunted. Crime tape stretched across the yard as officers moved in and out. No one spoke a word. Then a stretcher came through the front door with a body bag strapped tightly on top of it. Someone gasped. I felt my mom's hand grip my shoulder. That was enough for my parents. They turned us around and made me and my sister go back inside. I didn't sleep after that. I just laid in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering what could have possibly happened in that house. The next morning, I went through my routine and headed to the bus stop like normal. I was standing there when I heard my name being shouted. I turned and saw my best friend Joshua running toward me along with Damien, who was right behind him. They were both out of breath, talking over each other so fast I couldn't understand a word. I told them to slow down. Joshua finally blurted it out. "Nick's dad is dead." I stared at him, waiting for him to laugh or take it back. When he didn't, I asked him to say it again. He did, but louder this time. Damien jumped in, explaining that someone had called the police the night before about screams coming from the Dreadmore house. Nick's dad, who was already working patrol, had gone inside to check it out. According to rumors, he just died. No explanation or struggle. He just collapsed. The bus showed up before any of us could say anything else, and when we stepped on, we noticed Nick wasn't on it. He wasn't at school either. Days passed, then weeks eventually. Missing person flyers with Nick's face started appearing on light poles, strip malls, bus stops, just about everywhere you can think of. I saw his mom out there almost every day, stapling them up for hours. Police cars even started stopping by her house regularly. One night I overheard my mom telling my dad that Nick's mom had started showing up to work drunk and getting sent home early. Then came the night that started it all. I couldn't sleep, so I got out of bed and pulled my telescope toward the window, aiming it at the moon like I'd done 100 times before. But when I opened the curtains, I noticed movement on the street. I adjusted the lens and felt my chest tighten. It was Nick's mom. She was walking slowly like she wasn't fully awake. I followed her with the telescope as she moved down the block. She was heading straight for the Dreadmore house. I watched as she reached the porch and lifted her hand toward the doorknob. Then she stopped for a second. Everything was still. Then her head turned slowly. Too slowly. She looked straight at my window. My breath caught in my throat as I adjusted the focus. Her face filled the lens, and her skin was pale in a way that didn't look human anymore. It was stretched tight like all the blood had been drained out of it. Her eyes were the worst part, though, as they sunk deep into her face, completely black, not reflecting a single trace of light. She just stared with her mouth hung slightly open, as if she was trying to remember how to speak. I dropped the telescope and stumbled backward, screaming. My parents came rushing into my room, my mom flipping on the lights while my dad stood in the doorway, already annoyed. "What's going on?" my mom asked. "Why are you screaming?" I was shaking as I tried to explain, words tumbling over each other. I told them about the telescope, about Nick's mom and her face, the way she looked right at me. My dad sighed before I even finished. "You were half asleep," he said. "You probably dreamed it." "I wasn't asleep," I said. "I was wide awake. I saw her." My mom exchanged a look with him. "You've been hearing a lot of scary things lately," she said gently. "With Nick and his dad, your mind is filling in gaps." "I know what I saw," I said, my voice cracking. "That's enough," my dad said. "Go back to bed." The light flicked off and they left. I lay there in the dark, wishing I hadn't looked through that telescope at all. The next day, I went to Joshua's house and told him and Damien everything. We sat on the floor in his room with the door shut, like we were planning something illegal. Damien laughed after I finished explaining. "So you're saying she turned into a ghost now?" he said. "Come on." "She didn't look normal," I said. "I'm telling you, something's wrong." Joshua didn't laugh. He just sat there, quiet, staring at the carpet. He knew me too well to think I'd make something like that up. Damien rolled his eyes and suggested we should go and investigate ourselves. "No," Joshua and I said at the same time. Later that day, we went outside to walk the neighborhood and saw police cars parked in front of Nick's mom's house. Damien asked one of the officers what was going on, but the cop brushed him off. As we walked away, we heard another officer say, "Her coworkers say she didn't show up this morning." I stopped walking. My heart pounded as I turned to them. "I told you," I said quietly. We ran back to Joshua's house and talked it over. If she went to the Dreadmore house, and Nick was missing too, then maybe that's where he is. "We should tell our parents," Damien said. So we did. They asked a lot of questions, but none of them sounded worried, just confused or annoyed. My parents were more upset that I'd been awake late than anything else. Later that night, lying awake in Joshua's room, I finally said what I'd been thinking all day. "No one's going to help," I said. "If Nick's still alive, he needs us." Joshua sat up in his sleeping bag. "You're talking about going inside that house." "I know," I said. "I don't want to, but we can't just do nothing." Damien didn't say anything at first. He stared at the wall, jaw clenched. Then he nodded. Joshua looked at him, then at me. "Let's do it," they both said. And that was the moment I would soon regret. After Joshua's parents finally fell asleep, we quietly got dressed, grabbed our flashlights and climbed out his bedroom window. We dropped into the bushes below, branches snapping and scratching at our arms as we landed. None of us laughed, none of us spoke. We moved quickly, cutting through backyards and hopping fences until we reached Wicked Lane. The Dreadmore house waited at the end of the street. We approached the house and stood there for a moment, staring at it. The house looked bigger than usual, like it was leaning forward, watching us. "Maybe this wasn't the best idea," Damien whispered. "We should head back." Before I could answer, Joshua shook his head. "No," he said. "We're going inside. We're finding Nick and his mom." But what if they're dead? Damien asked. Joshua swallowed. Then at least we'll know, he said, and we'll tell the police where to find them. He stepped onto the porch. We followed. The front door was already slightly open, so Joshua pushed it and it creaked open. We were greeted with darkness until we turned on our flashlights and stepped into a living room frozen in time with old furniture from the 50s or 60s. Thick dust coating everything, cobwebs hanging in the corners. My light drifted upward and stopped on a large portrait above the fireplace. In the painting was a family of 5. A mother, a father, and 3 children. Something about their eyes made my skin crawl because as I looked closely, I realized they didn't look painted. They looked aware. This has to be the Dreadmores, I said. Joshua nodded. You remember the story, right? I asked him to tell it again. He said, the family moved in decades ago after making a deal that was too good to be true. The real estate agent promised them the house for almost nothing. For weeks, everything seemed fine until the youngest daughter, Rebecca, started talking about the red door. Upstairs, at the end of a long hallway, was a single door painted red. No one could open it. The agent claimed it was just a storage space, but whispers came from behind it along with loud sounds of scratching. Soon, the family started seeing things and hearing voices. Eventually, paranoia set in. Then one night, they left everything behind and vanished. Joshua finished the story just as something shuffled above us. We froze. Slowly, we moved towards the staircase. Every step creaked under our weight. When we reached the top, we turned to our left and there it was. The red door. Nick and his mom have to be behind that door, Damien whispered. None of us answered. We just slowly moved down the hallway with every step carrying an impending sense of doom. But we abruptly stopped as we started to smell smoke. I looked over the railing only to see the entire downstairs on fire. Flames climbed the walls, roaring upward. Panic took over as we ran from door to door, yanking handles, screaming for help, but none of them would open. The fire crawled up the stairs. Then, to our surprise, the red door creaked open. We didn't hesitate to sprint towards it. Joshua ran through. Damien followed. I was right behind them when the door slammed shut so hard in my face that my ears rang. When the ringing stopped, I turned around. The fire was gone. The house was filled with silence. I rushed to the railing. The downstairs was untouched. No flames, no smoke, no heat. Just darkness. Joshua and Damien were gone. I ran to the red door and yanked the knob. I pounded on it until my hand swelled, until my throat was raw from screaming eventually. All I could do was sit there and cry. The police would search the Dreadmore house from top to bottom after I told them everything. They said they never found a red door. They questioned me for hours, going over the same details again and again, trying to make sense of something they couldn't explain and something I couldn't prove. Months passed. Life kept moving, even though I felt stuck. Sometimes, late at night, I feel the urge to set up my telescope and aim it at the house. I tell myself it's a bad idea, that my imagination is looking for patterns that aren't there, but every time I look, I swear I see the same thing. 2 small figures standing in the window on the far left side of the house, watching me. So if you take anything from this story, whatever you do, never go inside anywhere you have no business being. My wife Amelia and I met in high school. She was the popular, bubbly girl that everybody loved, and I was lucky to have anyone even give me a second glance. I honestly don't know how the hell I pulled it off, but after a chance encounter in the library, we became inseparable. Fast forward 4 years and we were married, ready to take on anything the world could throw at us together. At least, that's what the plan was. Ami was at the ripe old age of 24 when she began to experience severe headaches and frequent nosebleeds. When we got the news, I felt as though we had both been given the 8-month prognosis. I'll never forget the tears and sobbing, the cries of anguish that resounded through the doctor's office. That had all been from me. Amelia sat quietly, a faraway look in her green eyes. I took off extended time from work and dedicated my hours to Ami, whether she was in the hospital or at home with me and her family, as she became more and more withered. I wouldn't help but to notice the looks her father and sister would give me. It was as though they blamed me somehow for their daughter's condition. The venom in their eyes seemed to hiss. It should have been you. One night as Ami and I lay together in bed, the insignificant voices droning from the TV, she began to ask me about something we had never discussed before. In all our years together, do you think we go on in the afterlife? The question hit me like a brick wall. I had never been religious, but what was I supposed to say to the love of my life, who was facing her own fading mortality? Of course, baby, without a doubt in my mind. Your light is too bright to ever go out. I believe that it'll shine forever. She had looked into my eyes after that, as if examining me for dishonesty. Thankfully, she did not detect it. Good. I'll be waiting for you. I'm sure it'll feel just like a few seconds or so. Time and suffering won't exist anymore. I should have let the conversation end, but playing up my lie even more, I said, I want you to send me a sign, Ami. Send me a signal of some sort that you're thriving. Whether it's that old Madonna song you like, or a canary out on the porch, singing its heart out. Anything. Anything so that I can think of you. Amelia had wound herself even tighter into me at that point, a sad smile on her face. I will. The doctors hadn't been quite right with their grim prediction. Amelia persisted for almost 10 months before that light of hers finally faded. I'm ashamed to say that, though I tried my damnedest to speak at her funeral, I broke down and couldn't do it. I was forced to sit and watch with red eyes as her family and friends told wonderful stories about the love of my life. My best friend, and I, her husband, had nothing to offer the congregation. Time seemed to slow down after she left me. My performance at work dipped. I began avoiding my own friends even more, and I picked up the bottle. There seemed to be a hole, deep and hollow, a black chasm that had formed deep within me, and it would never, ever be filled again. The first sign came 2 months after she had passed. I was sitting on my porch, drifting into sleep, the glass of whiskey in my hand slowly sliding out. There was a quick movement, and I jerked back to full consciousness. A white cat had darted out of nowhere, and was now sitting at the bottom step of my porch. I had a mind to shoo it away, but somehow my booze-addled brain was still able to recall the conversation that Ami and I had had all those eons ago. I sat forward, hardly believing it. The cat merely looked up at me with green eyes, and I could swear that it looked as though she was smiling. I began to smile myself, tears forming in my eyes. Then there was more movement. 2 coyotes sprung forward, faster than the cat had a chance to react. I, myself, fell to my knees, clumsily reaching out for her, but she had no chance. The 2 haggard animals ripped her apart. A flurry of white fur and red blood stabbed into my eyes and heart. The brief feeling of happiness that I had been snuffed out. One of the coyotes looked up at me, and this time there was no doubt. It was smiling. 2 weeks later, I had my old radio plugged in, listening to sad music. Yes, I have a phone and YouTube, but listening to the radio had always been something Ami and I had done. Going back to high school, I was again nearly asleep when I could hear Madonna's seductive voice over the airwaves. I could feel a sort of relief, though my cynicism wouldn't allow me to believe that this was actually my wife. It's just the radio. How many Madonna songs are played a day? I closed my eyes tight and turned over. But then suddenly there was a terrible static sound blaring from the radio. And amongst that static, what sounded like screams. Screams the likes of which I have never heard before, born from some place that should not exist. I sat up in bed, glancing at the old unit, but now there was only Madonna, singing a Spanish lullaby. I had to have been losing it. Either the liquor or the sadness it was supposed to be killing were finally getting to me. I had to do better for myself. For Amelia, I unplugged the radio, staggered down to the kitchen and poured out every single bottle of alcohol and can of beer in my kitchen. I had had enough. Ami wouldn't have wanted me to live like this, even if I didn't believe she was still out there somewhere, waiting for me. I went back to work with a new haircut, shave, and mindset. I was going to get back on track. My boss even complimented me during my shift, as I took phone calls from potential clients. I felt a lot better than I had in recent memory. 2 hours into my shift, I popped open a snack and drank some water to hydrate myself. As I answered my next call, I spat the water out as the low, scratchy voice whispered to me, "Life is terrible, but death is endless, my love." The voice wasn't Ami's. I fell over backwards in my chair, kicking over my keyboard and unplugging my headphones. I jumped up and looked at my phone, but the call had ended. There was no record of it when I attempted to do a redial. I've since bought more alcohol. Hell, even more than I had before. Whether I'm sitting on my porch, driving home, or even laying in a ball in my bed, I can't help but to notice the inherent cruelty in life, seemingly magnified twofold. But I asked for this. I did ask her to send me a sign, after all. I grew up in a house tucked into the woods not far from Seattle, close enough to a main road that you could still hear the world if you listened, but far enough that the trees felt like they were alive and watching. It was quiet in a way that didn't feel empty, just watchful. Our house sat there with the forest pressing in around it, like it had been placed in the middle of something older. I lived there with my dad, my mom, and my older brother. We had 3 dogs, Blue, Daisy, and Pete, so the house was never really still. There was always movement, always noise, something grounding you in the fact that you weren't alone. At least, that is how it was at first. I was young, around 5 when everything started. At that age, I didn't know anything about ghosts or the paranormal or anything like that. There wasn't some idea planted in my head that made me expect things to happen. Whatever I experienced it without context, just as something real. And for a while, it was small things. Little moments that didn't make sense but were easy to brush off. A quick tug at the back of my shirt when no one was there. Movement in the corner of my eye that disappeared the second I tried to focus on it. The kind of things you notice for a second, then forget, until they start happening again and again. At the time, none of it had a name. It was just something. Then my mom passed away. After that, the house didn't feel the same. Not in a way I could explain back then, but something shifted. The quiet felt heavier, the nights felt longer, and the small things stopped being small. It seemed worse at night. Everything didn't all at once, not in some dramatic way, but enough that I began to notice a pattern. The house would settle into silence, the kind that fills your ears when everything else is gone. My room was always the center of it. That was where it felt the strongest. One night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps. They were slow, deliberate, coming from the left side of my bed. Not in the hallway, not somewhere distant, but inside the room with me. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe right. I just pulled the blanket over my head and stayed there, trying to disappear under it, using it as a false sense of protection. Then it happened. A roar, loud and sudden, right in my ear. close enough that it felt like whatever made it was right next to my face. I didn't think, I just ran. I bolted out of my room, down the hallway and straight into my brother's room. I didn't even knock, just burst in and climbed into his bed. I remember being terrified of looking back into the hallway, especially at his open doorway when the lights were off. It always felt like something could be standing there if I looked too long. After that, it didn't stop. Some nights when I was under the covers, I would feel the end of my bed move. Not slightly, not like something settling, but like weight pressing down, then lifting, like something was sitting there or bouncing lightly. I never checked, I never looked. I stayed still and waited for it to stop. During the day, things were quieter, but not gone. I would hear voices sometimes, coming from behind closed doors when no one else was home. Not loud, not clear enough to understand, but enough to know they were there. Other times I would catch movement where there wouldn't be any. Something shifting just out of sight. And then there were the dreams. They didn't feel like normal dreams. They felt close, like they were happening just on the other side of being awake. Sometimes I would see glowing red eyes at the end of the hallway, staring back at me before I woke up. Other times, things would look normal at first and then something would be wrong. One time I woke up and walked into the living room. From there I could see straight into the kitchen. My mom was there standing at the stove, cooking like nothing had ever happened. I remember walking closer, not questioning it, just accepting it. Then I looked outside. Pete was in the yard, but he wasn't right. His body looked wrong, stretched and uneven, like something had tried to shape him and didn't get it quite right. He turned and looked at me. That's when I woke up. Even outside, it didn't fully go away. There were times I would look out toward the edge of the forest and see figures standing there, just far enough that I couldn't make out details. Sometimes they looked like people, sometimes they would wave. I never waved back. And then there was the one time that almost went further. There were people over that day, my brother's friends. Everyone was outside, talking, messing around, not really paying attention. I wandered off without anyone noticing, moving toward the tree line like I had done before. That's when I heard it, a voice calling my name. It sounded exactly like my dad's girlfriend, familiar, clear, and close enough that I didn't question it. It came from the woods just beyond where the trees started, calling again and again, steady, patient. I started walking toward it, closer to the trees, closer to the voice, and I probably would have kept going if something hadn't interrupted it. I heard a dirt bike getting louder, cutting through everything else. One of my brother's friends came up fast, stopped, and pulled me onto the back before I could go any further. He took me back to the house. When I got there, I asked where my dad's girlfriend was. They told me she wasn't there. She had never been there. Edit. I remembered a few more things about the house I talked about before, and the more I think about it, the more certain details stand out. First, the layout. If you walked out of my room, there was a hallway. On the left side were two doors. The first was the bathroom, and the second was the washroom. On the right side was my brother's room, and then my parents' room further down. At the very end of the hallway, on the left side, was the side door that led outside. That door led directly to the area I mentioned before, where the old flower bed was. It was only about 5 feet from the door. I was told it had already been there before we moved in, and neither my brother nor I ever really questioned it at the time, but looking back, both of us had the same thought about it. We both believed it might have been a grave, not based on anything concrete, just a feeling we both had. Another thing I realize is that I don't remember ever seeing any of our dogs near that flower bed. Not once. They never dug at it, never laid near it, nothing. It just kind of existed there, untouched. There was also the staircase my dad had uncovered on that same side of the house. It was made of what looked like old stone or cobble, leading down toward the backyard since the front of the house was elevated. I never thought much of it at the time, but now it feels strange that something like that was just buried there. When I think about everything together, the layout, the side door, the flower bed, the staircase, and the fact that most of the things I experienced happened around my room in that hallway, it all feels a lot more connected than I realized as a kid. I'm still trying to piece together what was actually happening, versus what I might have just imagined at that age. But the details don't feel random anymore. I've always wanted to make this trip. My whole life, Seattle has been my home, and I'd never ventured far before now. A coast-to-coast road trip with my husband and children had been a fantasy of mine since I first started dating the man decades ago. It slowly became clear over the years that despite his promises, the trip would never be happening. At 50, I'm finally on the road, but I never wanted it to be like this. Not under these circumstances. I am alone. It's only happening now because my son is dead. After the divorce, my children were, in my mind, old enough to choose where they wanted to live. John, my oldest, chose to stay with me. My daughter, Bree, went with my ex-husband. I tried my best to maintain a relationship with her, but she never seemed interested. God only knows what my ex was telling her about me. Growing up, John was my world. I seldom dated after leaving his father. I just never had the time, as I worked 2 or 3 jobs while raising him. It was worth it, though. John knew about my dream trip. He brought it up several times along his journey to becoming a man. "You'll get your trip one day, Ma," he'd said, "even if I have to take you myself." His funeral was the worst day of my life. My ex-husband and daughter were there, and a piece of me hoped I would have at least some support from them. But it wasn't to be. The glare my ex gave me said everything, even though he didn't speak the words. "It's all your fault." I couldn't even bring myself to speak at the podium after that. My daughter gave a eulogy instead. Through sobs, she lamented her rocky relationship with John, and how much she regretted her role in them not being close. She even went as far as to tell everyone that he had been her inspiration to becoming a paramedic. John had never married, so I suppose it shouldn't have come as a surprise that he had appointed me the executor of his estate. It was then I learned he had listed me as the beneficiary of $1 million life insurance policy. I didn't give a crap about the money, or really much of anything. I spent a lot of time watching videos of my son on my phone. Every time I pressed play, I wished the house fire hadn't destroyed the old tapes from when our family was together. I would have given anything to see those again. It was at this low point I knew it was time for that road trip. It started off normally enough. I made the usual tourist stops, as well as many off the beaten path, discovered through years of research. It wasn't until the Midwest that the problem started. I won't name the state, just in case. I had been driving long enough to not remember what time I had started that day. The sun had long since set when my low fuel warning pinged from the dashboard. The timing was perfect, as I could barely keep my eyes open. I pulled off at the first exit I saw that listed a gas station, and slowly followed an empty road for miles towards a promised town. Johnstown. Seeing the name made my spine shiver, but a glance at the gas gauge decided the matter for me. After several uncomfortable miles, the lights of a gas station appeared along the main road into town. As I pulled up to the pump, I noticed the absence of a credit card reader. Well, I did not want to enter the small building before me as a woman alone at night. The .32 Tomcat pistol in my purse gave me enough nerve to go inside to buy fuel. Though outdated, the inside was surprisingly well maintained. I went straight up to the counter, where a young man in a camo hat stood, looking thoroughly uninterested. "Hi," I said, forcing a smile. "Can I get some gas on the pump out there?" The man stared at me without a word. Though I held my smile, I felt the hairs on my neck standing up. I could have sworn the lights inside dimmed slightly when he began pushing buttons on the register. "How much?" he asked in a monotone voice. 50, I said, sliding cash onto the counter. "Keep what's left, if there is any." Without breaking his gaze to so much as glance at the bill, the man slowly reached for it. For a moment, the image of him snatching my arm and pulling me over the counter flashed across my mind, but he simply opened the drawer and placed the bill inside. "Anything else?" "No, sir, that's it. Thank you," I said before speed walking back to my car. Though I kept my head down, I could feel his eyes on me as I pumped. I considered making a break for the highway, but my eyelids began to flutter once more once back inside my car. I could see the town ahead, and decided it wouldn't hurt to at least see if the motel seemed safe. As I made my way down the main street, every building was dark, except for the motel. It was an unassuming rectangular building with 2 floors. Most of the windows were dark, but the few rooms with lights on were somewhat reassuring. I sat in my car for a moment, the engine still running. Nothing seemed unusual as I scanned the parking lot. It seemed safe enough to walk inside. I grabbed my backpack, stepped out of my car, and paused for a moment. I couldn't help but think of how much safer I would feel if John had been with me. When I walked towards the entrance, I looked back towards the street. To my surprise, the closest building was lit. I guess I had been too tired to notice it before. The neon sign out front read True Video. A video rental store still open in 2026. Wow, guess the town's a little behind, I thought. The motel manager greeted me as I stepped inside the front entrance. To my immense relief, she seemed to be a perfectly normal lady, roughly my own age, not much more at ease. I opted to rent a room and she gave me a physical iron key. Room 211 was exactly what you might expect. Old, small, with decor not updated since 1970. What paint that was visible in spots above the dreadful floral wallpaper was a weathered yellow. A green bed sat against the back wall, facing a dresser with a TV on it. I set my backpack on the bed before turning back towards the TV. It had been years since I had seen an old tube television, and right next to it, an honest-to-God VCR. My mind went straight to 1999 when John was little. Once a week, I would take him to Blockbuster, and we would choose a film for a family movie night. I thought back to True Video across the street. The nostalgia was too enticing. I made my way out into the cool air night. The hum of the neon sign soon broke the silence of the empty streets as I approached True Video. A bell on the door dinged as I stepped inside, but nobody approached the empty counter. I paid little attention, instead focusing on finding the family movie section. After a brief search, I held in my hands a copy of my son's favorite childhood movie, All Dogs Go to Heaven. I stared at the tape as I stood at the counter, lost in my memories. "Anything else for you tonight, ma'am?" came a familiar voice. My eyes snapped upward to see the young man from the gas station smiling at me from behind the counter. I felt a chill race throughout my body. I couldn't respond. While the young man's clothes and demeanor were entirely different, it was definitely him. This time, however, I noticed a small, circular scar on the side of his neck, as well as a name tag, Michael. My silence seemingly didn't affect the man, as he held his warm smile for several silent seconds. I regained control of my body and shook my head vigorously. "All right then," he beamed. "Your total is $537. Quickly, and with a shaking hand, I pulled a 5 and a 1 from my purse and dropped it on the counter, ignoring his outstretched hand. The man simply scooped the bills off the counter as if I hadn't been so rude, and handed me my change. "Thank you for your business, ma'am," Michael said cheerfully. Have a wonderful evening. I hurriedly left without a word, tape in hand. I didn't stop until I was safely locked back inside of my room, now wide awake. It probably took half an hour to calm down, but eventually I reasoned to myself that the men must be brothers, or maybe even cousins. It made sense with the limited employment options in a town this small. That had to be it. While still on edge, I was finally relaxed enough to push the tape into the VCR and settle myself in the bed. Of course, I was crying within the first 5 minutes of the film. It was like being brought back in time without my son there waiting for me. I cried harder as I thought of his heart attack. He wasn't even 30 yet. The coroner said it had been quick, but John had still died alone in the dark. An hour into the film, I had run out of tears. In a way, the brutal experience had made me feel closer to my baby boy. It had been worth it. I closed my eyes, ready to drift off as the movie played in the background, when I heard it. Static. I guess that's why we got away from tapes, I thought. But before I could even open my eyes, I heard my ex-husband's voice from the TV speakers. "He's beautiful. Good job, Grace." I'd know that moment anywhere. Sure enough, when my eyes snapped to the TV, there was the home video my husband had taken when John was born. The image of me holding our son in my hospital bed came into focus. Every fuzzy pixel matched the old tapes I'd lost in the fire. As I watched myself beam on the screen, the video again cut to static. After a moment came a video shot of the day we first brought John home. My ex gave a tour of the house on camera, proudly showing off the nursery we had built and decorated together. The screen cut again. My cheeks were soaked in tears. I was entirely transfixed. It hadn't even entered my mind how impossible this was. John's first Christmas. My dearly departed parents beamed as John happily beat the hellfire out of the toy they had gifted him. I saw the pride and joy on my own face. The video ended just as I remembered it, with John crapping himself loudly in his high chair. My parents' laughter was broken by another wall of static. John's first birthday played next. Then his first words. Well, we recorded those later in the day when he did it a second time. A video I had taken of him racing through the house in his father's cowboy boots came next. Then the day his sister Brianna was born. 3-year-old John grinned ear to ear as he held his little sister. The scene played out just as I remembered, but there was one difference. And that difference became a recurring theme. Whenever my daughter's face looked directly at the camera, the entire screen wavered and slid out of focus for a moment before returning to normal. Every video I had ever taken of the kids played in order. Every single one. Their dance party at ages 6 and 3, their first bike rides, the silly moments, each of their milestones, the blog I filmed for 7-year-old John, wherein he rambled about how the Easter Bunny must be a trained killer. I remembered how hard it was to keep a straight face during that. I moved to the edge of the bed, leaning forward as the next film started. I knew this was the final tape, but I didn't want it to end. In the video, my children were playing pirates. My son was sword fighting my daughter, and despite being a full head taller, he had been letting her get strikes in against him. John had clearly intended to lose, throwing an exaggerated lunge and leaving himself wide open, holding that pose to give Bree a chance to strike. She saw the opportunity and stabbed him in the chest with her foam sword. John died in the most over-the-top way he could, falling dramatically to the ground and announcing his defeat. Bree straddled him and paused. I thought she was making sure he was dead, or maybe even legitimately concerned. Then she brought her sword down on his face in a rage, over and over shrieking, "Die, die, die." The video ends abruptly then, as I shut the camera off to separate my kids and explained to Bree that there was no need to be so violent. The screen went black. I stared into it, barely holding myself together. This impossible, one-way conversation with the past had drained my soul. I tensed to stand up, but then the screen began a new video. One I had taken on my phone. John's 16th birthday. He sat with a scowl as I sang happy birthday to him with his friends. I grimaced. The moment was cute for me, but John had gotten a lot of flack for that video on social media. I was brought back to the moment I came to regret posting it. The screen flickered again. This time the video wasn't one I recognized. In it, my teenage kids were arguing. He held a sandwich bag of something I couldn't quite discern, and a look of utter disappointment. "Answer me," he said. "What is this? Where did you get it?" "Screw you," my daughter shouted. "You're not our dad. Give that back." "Sis, this stuff can get you arrested." "I don't care. It's my life, not yours. I don't answer to you." "I'll tell Mom if you don't tell me where you got it right now." "Go ahead," Bree shouted. "I don't care what Mom thinks. Dad won't believe either of you anyway." At this, John winced. The camera zoomed in on his face. He looked helpless. "I just don't want you to lose everything," he said quietly. "I'm not gonna, you idiot," she screamed. "You think I've never done this stuff before? I'm gonna party if I want, and you can deal with it." Before I could acknowledge the frozen brick that had fallen into my gut, the video changed again. It was the home I shared with John after the divorce. The shot came from somewhere across the street. The house was dark and nothing seemed amiss. Then an orange glow appeared in one corner of the house. The fire. And worse, a figure passed by the flames, fleeing the scene. My heart nearly fell out of my body. The fire department had suspected arson, but no concrete evidence had emerged in the investigation. At the time, my ex-husband and I had been in legal battles to increase my visitation with my daughter. Once John had told me about the drugs, I tried to get more involved in her life. My ex fought me every step of the way. The police immediately questioned him, but told me his alibi had been rock solid. I was numb, but I didn't have time to dwell on the revelation as the next video began. John's high school graduation walk. A happy memory, out of place for this time, but one I had filmed myself. His father had chosen not to attend, but his sister had. When the final video appeared before me, John sported the same new haircut as he had the year he died. My two kids were sipping vodka at John's kitchen table. Things had been strained between them for at least a decade, but my daughter had grown up quite a lot after she moved away from my ex and his influence. It was nice to see them getting along. The two were playing a card game, with the loser having to take a sip from their glass every round. My daughter pounded down the last drops, and excused herself to refill her glass. The camera followed her to the counter. With her back to John, she filled her glass from a water bottle. The frame stopped with a smirk on her face as she did so. I assumed she was proud of cheating in their contest. The screen glitched again, and there was John. My son was sprawled on the floor, drooling over himself and giggling profusely. "Hey, sis," he slurred from the floor. "I'm so glad you came over. I missed drinking with you." My daughter's face wavered on the screen again. "No, thank you, bro," she said, slowly reaching into her bag, before kneeling down beside her big brother. "You've done your part perfectly." "Part?" he said. "Oh, am I an actor now?" The camera suddenly shifted to my daughter's point of view. "Sure," she said, glancing down at the syringe in her hand. A real A-lister. John grinned, his head flopping onto his shoulder. "I'd like to thank the Academy for—" he started, but the alcohol had taken its toll. My heart thundered as I watched Bree take the cap off the syringe. "I've got you, bro," she said soothingly. "Just sleep." I watched helplessly as whatever she gave him took effect. I saw my son cough, convulse, froth at the mouth, and die, reaching out to his sister for help the entire time. That bitch'll get the money, Bree whispered after John stopped moving. I'm sure of it, but I'll figure something out. The screen abruptly went black. The VCR ejected the tape. Tears flowed freely as I came to terms with the horrors I had just seen. I sobbed in the darkness of my hotel room for several minutes. I snatched the tape from the VCR and sprinted out of the room. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, my eyes shot across the street to True Video. The storefront was entirely dark. I didn't care if they were closed. I would be getting my answers. I stormed up to the building, but stopped dead when I drew close. The windows were shattered and boarded up from the inside. The neon sign was broken and clung to charred brick by a single rusty bolt, ready to give way at any moment. When I tried the front door, it was unlocked. When I stepped inside the store, I found it completely destroyed. Half the inventory was long gone. What remained was caked in dust and ash. My eyes fell to the counter I had stood at hours earlier. On it, a small television flickered to life. Michael came into focus on the screen. Get her messages, he said. She never deleted them. She had help getting the drugs. Her boyfriend also knows she set the fire and will break under pressure. Good luck. When he finished, the TV went dark. I don't know how long I stared at it. It might have been minutes, maybe even hours. When I finally regained my senses, I went straight to the only local I could speak to. Bursting through the motel entrance, I stomped up to the counter and threw the tape down on it. What is going on in this town? I shouted at the manager. Where did that freak at True Video get this? The manager turned ghost white but said nothing. Answer me. She took a deep breath. What did you see on the tape? She asked in a voice barely above a whisper. I saw my daughter. I said as my voice cracked. I saw her murder her brother. Did Michael give that to you? Yes, I said, raising my broken voice once again. And what the hell was he doing at the gas station earlier? I want to know what sick game he's playing. I want to know right now. Please don't talk about my sons like that. The manager interrupted quietly. She sighed. Daniel and Michael are my twin boys. She said, Daniel works at the gas station, and Michael worked at True Video. He was killed in a robbery 2 years ago. He was shot in the throat before they burned the store down. She paused for a moment. I recognized her pain. One grieving mother to another. They caught the killers, thanks to the security cameras. But last year, another traveler said he rented a video from that store. He said it showed the murder of his sister. She looked at me. The tape will be blank now, she said. But Michael was never one to lie. Please leave. Get justice for your son. And with that, she turned her back to me. No amount of screaming made her turn around again. So I went home. Drove all through the night and all day until I made it home. I found the information I needed. I got the man to talk. The guilt-ridden coward fessed up quick. My daughter was arrested and charged with John's murder. Last month, the jury convicted her and sentenced her to life in prison without parole. That same day, a VHS tape appeared on my doorstep. With shaking hands, I pressed play. My son appeared on the screen. He said nothing, but he didn't have to. He smiled gently and waved once before the video went black. My VCR whirred and opened to eject the tape, but nothing came out. But I got the message. We met on Craigslist of all places. It might seem like a strange way to meet a new friend, but my band was looking for a singer, and that's where he found us. His audition was a surreal experience. He can't sing for anything, but it turns out we're into a lot of the same kinds of books. So he didn't join the band, but we hit it off in a different way. He lives in a fancy gated community on the edge of town. These days I go there once a week for a sort of two-person book club. We're working through Backer's Aspect Emperor series right now. But that's irrelevant, other than the fact that I sometimes think he likes it for the wrong reasons. And maybe that was an early warning. We almost never discuss our day jobs, or night job, in my case. I'm a guard, but he's a dentist. And he loves it. It's not that weird to love your job, right? I'm sure lots of dentists love their jobs. But the other week I got to his house, and he opened the door all smiling and said, "Got to pull some teeth today. A college girl needed 4 teeth pulled." "Okay," I said. She hated it. Even with all the laughing gas, she was squirming as all those teeth came out, and she said she was going to have nightmares. What? Never mind. How was your week? The rest of that meetup went as usual. No more talk of pulling teeth, no more talk of that poor girl. After we discussed that week's chapters, we played pool. He has a pool table in his basement, and he's almost unbelievably good at it. A week ago, I showed up for another regular hangout. My friend opened his massive front door like normal, and greeted me like normal. "What's up? Anything interesting this week?" etc. I told him about a weird gig the band had. He's never had a problem with me talking about the band, even though he didn't make the cut. As he puts it, auditioning was just some strange whim. My real passion is dentistry. And that day, oh God, did he talk about dentistry. I had asked him in return, "Anything interesting in your week?" To which he laughed. An old wrinkly grandpa needed 6 teeth pulled, and he was not happy about it. Huh? My friend laughed harder, but I was. You have to understand. In every way other than this weird teeth business, he is a good friend. Someone important to me died recently, and to be honest, I don't know if I'd still be here if it weren't for his friendship. So he tried to keep going about this old grandpa whose teeth he pulled, apparently with no laughing gas or nothing, and I just did my best to steer him toward the books. The last he said on the old grandpa was, I think he went to hell and back. He was talking about demons and stuff, man. Demons and stuff. Right. Speaking of going to hell and back, it was finally warm enough to swim in his pool that day. He has a damn water slide. Imagine. I'll get to the point. At first it seemed like any other day. He seemed, at first, uninterested in monologuing about teeth. I told him about a date I went on. He acted genuinely interested, and gave me some legitimate good advice. We discussed a horrid chapter in the book, and spent half the discussion laughing maniacally at jokes that would take too long to explain. Eventually he got out his chessboard, and I saw that closet had so many games in it. We got through 5 tense games of chess with no issue, but halfway through the 6th game, he interrupted something I was saying to say, a middle-aged fat guy needed all his teeth pulled. Excuse me? All of them. I took out all of his teeth. I tried to let that slide. The 6th chess game kept going, almost like nothing happened. My friend muttered something about a fairy and the devil, and it was frustrating how easily he beat me. He threw me off balance with all that teeth business, but he didn't gloat. He is never a sore winner. He simply said, "I'll be back," which is what he always says when the bathroom's about to smell, and I'll have to wait a bit. However, while I waited, I couldn't sit still. When he had opened his board game closet to get the chessboard, I saw he had a lot of different games. I was curious, is all. I opened the same closet. I thought it was the same one. You know those butterfly things that some people have on their walls? The hanging frames with all the dead butterflies inside them? This closet had dozens of the things, and each contained, instead of butterflies, dozens of human teeth. Was this where he keeps them? It was hundreds of teeth in total. I vomited in my mouth. Then I heard the toilet flush, so I closed that horrible closet, everything as I left it, and went back to sit at the chessboard. My friend came back into the room and said, "Oh, I forgot to mention, a date's coming to pick me up tonight, so I'll need you to leave a little early." "Oh, really? Nice. Alright. When?" I was having trouble acting normal. He frowned. "You know what? Now. Now is good." He walked me out. Bye," I said. "See you next week. How many chapters?" "Yeah, bye," he said, almost uninterested. The door closed and I was outside in the dark, alone. Does he know I saw it? What did I see? Who is he? God, I can't sleep.